Let's get started, and we'll try to get this all done today, and I think we can do it. One of the things that we try to do just as a company and our mentality here, our driving rules, is let's do more than just quilting on a quilt. Let's use the quilt frame and the machine. They're powerful tools, but you know, crafters and sewers and quilters go through these peaks and valleys of what they do, and you don't want to get into a rut of just doing the same old table runner every time or the same old wall quilt and mixed in with big bed quilts every now and then. And one thing about these frames and machines, they're a horizontal surface, and if they're not used, they will start to collect things, and we don't want stuff to collect on our frames. So today we're going to do a neat project. We're going to do a bag, a little mini tote bag on the frame. And what I have hooped up on the frame is some muslin and then some foam. This is about 3/16 of an inch Pellon foam fill, and then a top piece of batik fabric. And we're going to make a mini tote. But wait a second, we don't have a mini tote design in the QBOT. We haven't saved anything yet. But we do have something that we've printed out. And if you were making this conventionally off the frame, you would have to print out a pattern and then tape your pieces of paper together and then take this over to your cutting board and align everything and cut everything out. But what if you could just take the same design and it's just printed on one single sheet of paper like this? We're going to make this mini tote bag today, right now, hopefully inside 30 minutes. So I'm over at the QBOT, and you can see on the frame, I've taken a copy of that pattern and I've taped it down onto my fabric. So this is taped all around so that it doesn't scoot around. I'm going to go and use my line quilting function to actually record this boundary and save it. And then this will be the cutting line that we will use later. So I've marked out my points off camera so I don't make a mistake when I'm selecting the points around here. I want to do it with the least amount of overstitching. I'm going to use my offset, which is that little laser, and this is kind of nice. When it goes from here, it's nice and bright, but as soon as it's in the black line, it dims down quite a bit, so I know that I'm selecting the right point. Now I'm just going to select the points on this piece of paper. I'm just basically, this is old-fashioned, just tracing the pattern into QBOT. And if I were to make this tote at this size, this would be one tiny tote. But after we're done selecting all the points and saving this design, we can then bring it in as just a pattern, and then we can scale it to any scale we want. So here is my over tracking right there. That's my back tracking line. I'll go around to this side, and I'm selecting several points on this because this has kind of got a bow to it. This isn't just a straight line. It's got a little bow to it. So we want to capture that. A couple more points. And we're done. We've selected all the points we need to define. Actually, I need to undo one. I think I missed one right there, like I missed yesterday. I got to work on my selecting skills. Okay, so there I'm done. And there's our design. So what do we do now? We're not going to quilt this. We're just going to save it. We're going to save it as mini tote. Press OK. Done. Now, back to the fabric. We just peel up that piece of paper. Now we're going to do some stitching. So I just go back to my main menu, and I'm going to go into pattern quilting, just like yesterday, just like day 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to use, instead of my offset today, I'm going to use for this, I want to make this as big as I can. So I'm going to uncheck my offset, and I'm going to place the needle at the full extent that I can go, and then select my boundary points. So this is just my boundary of what I have hooped up on the frame. There, I've just selected that little rectangle. I press done. No inner boundary shape. I go to my saved patterns and bring in my Mini-Tote. And it looks pretty good, but I can see that I need to modify it just a bit. It looks like it, when I had the paper on the frame, it was rotated. So I just nudged it 1 degree and I rotated it. And that looks good. But let's see how big it is. Let's make it, it's pretty close. Let's make it 10 3/4 inches. So that's pretty nice. Now all we have to do is we're going to quilt this out, or sew it out. It's really not quilting, I guess. We are using a quilting frame, but it's just really sewing. We're going to move to the start point. And what this is just the guidelines and cut lines for this project. So it's going to be sewing the cut lines. So imagine this were a paper pattern and we traced the cut lines, or if it was the tissue-y kind of pattern and you had it pinned to your fabric, these outside lines are what we will trim to when we construct the bag. And the inside lines are what we're going to align, how we're going, the different textures we're going to put on the fabric. And we're just going to let this go. We can put that into the little screen, and then we can see some examples over here on our little example table. This is a tote bag, same basic design, and here's where we're going with this. We're going to put in a texture up here. There's a spot underneath this piece of ribbon right here where these two designs intersect. That's that vertical line that I had selected a minute ago. And then we've got cross hatching on the bottom. Here is an example of exactly the size we're doing today on the frame. And this is a different material. This is a nice denim. And you can see with the foam in there, the textures that we get. And speaking of textures and bag making in general, this is a little train case. And here you can see, yeah, I think you can see that pretty well. You can see the textures of those pebbles beautifully quilted out on QBOT. And then on the bottom, we have, again, some more texture. This was a crosshatch, a diamond crosshatch, and finished off with some really nice piping. Speaking of finished projects, this was yesterday's project that we did finish off, and we have it on our Instagram. These have been bound, and they look great. So back on the frame, we have just finished up the outline of the bag. And now we're going to do the next step, which I like, and I've shown every day this week. I really like to do crosshatching. If you haven't seen or gotten the feel for that, I love the crosshatch. Now on here, we have this center portion, and it is, let me pull up my original piece of paper. Oops. It is this section right here. So that little H section there, we're going to fill with crosshatching. And it's just as easy as going to our crosshatch button. We will use the offset. I'm choosing this point here. And remember, this is a cut line. So we can trace around that, or because all of this is getting cut away anyway, I'm just going to select basically a rectangle here. And I'm going to go just outside a little bit so that, again, the excess will get cut off. And I select my rectangle. And I press done. No inner boundary shape. And since I have practiced, I know how much time I have. I'm going to do a 1-inch grid spacing. I'm going to rotate that 45 degrees, so it's in a diamond shape. And then I'm going to look and see how well it is centered. I can move this around, and I want to keep it pretty even on the verticals and pretty even on the horizontal lines, top and bottom, so that it's basically in the middle. The design isn't skewed to one side noticeably. Because if we can make it as perfect as we can, then we should. I'm not going to do any jump stitches because everything along those edges is either going to be cut or it's going to be hidden by a ribbon later. So there, I'm ready to start, and I move to start point. And here's where it gets fun, because when you start putting a little bit denser design into the area, you start to see that the effect of the foam really kind of pop. And this is the first time this week that we get to see the crosshatch feature actually being used. So what it will do is it's calculated the most efficient way to go around that box so that there's the least amount of overstitching along the boundaries. And it's just going to go to town. You can watch it a little bit because it is kind of nice to watch. Because we left it at a 90-degree square. It's a square crosshatch. And we can be guaranteed that everything is going to be perpendicular, because with the QBOT, well, it just does it. We don't have to worry about ruler work or holding that ruler. If you were doing this traditionally with a ruler work, you'd have to hold that ruler and make sure that your lines are perpendicular, and then every subsequent line is parallel. And in theory, that will always work. And in practice, sometimes the ruler slips, or as you're moving this hand with on your handlebar and you're moving the machine, something can catch, or you notice that you might have slipped on the ruler if it's not really down. So with QBOT, we just don't worry about it. We let it go. I've got a sample over here where I've done, I think this fabric over here is for another kind of train case where I've done a larger example of cross hatching. So this, we actually wanted to have a big piece of fabric for that train case project. And again, cross hatching, it seems so simple, but when it's done really nicely, it adds a lot of texture and fun to the design. Here, this is very hard to look at, just polka dots, but we do have some wavy lines on that. And then on this one, we actually used a metallic thread just to highlight a little bit. Black can be difficult with a pattern on it if you don't have something that tries to pop out of there to maybe fight that a little bit. Since we have a little bit more time over at as that's quilting out, and you notice that I'm not really paying attention to it. Yesterday, we didn't get to show another project that we did in a similar fashion as yesterday's project. This is bunting, and we quilted out the bunting shape all in one on that piece of orange fabric with the backing on the back. And then we cut these individually out, turned them, and then we did these letters, which are adhesive letters, with the decorative stitch around it, which came out really, really nice. So back at the frame, we're cranking through this. You can start to see the pillowing that we're getting. The ribbon we're going to use on this bag, and I'll get it out of the way, is this. And this will be placed right here along that seam. So in our next step, when we go over here, we're going to be careful that we place our design nicely. And we're going to use that as a template. Okay, so our cross hatching is done. We hit exit. And I pull up my bobbin thread and trim all that like normal. Okay, so now we need to go over and I'll do this panel right here. So we need to put something in it. And I like it to match this. This is kind of neat. Looks a little bit like, could be nice water, Pacific water. Looks like a little turtle too. So we go into pattern quilting. I'm going to use my offset. So I'm selecting my points. Again, I'm selecting my points over there with the laser. And I'll set a point there. And you know what? Because I got to remember that this is our trim line. I'm just going to go outside just a little bit. I'm going to stay in line with this line, but I'm just going to go outside, because if you can give yourself a little wiggle room for later in the trimming process, you might as well take it. And I'll mark outside here. We don't have to be as precise because we're not trying to be precise here. I'll go outside just a little. And just so that I'm good here, this is my boundary. Okay, and I say done. And do I want to set another boundary shape, an inner boundary shape? No. I want to go into my Fast Tracks design, and I like this scallop. Scallops are always fun. So I'm going to select this as my design. But I really don't like it in that orientation. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then that looks a little bit small. And it looks a little too circular and a little bit too perfect. So I am going to turn proportional scaling off, which is that button right there. And now with my two fingers, I'm just going to stretch it that way. And I'm going to stretch it a little too much that way. There we go. Bringing it back, bringing it back. There we go. And let's look up and down, get things kind of even, maybe stretch it just a bit more, stretch it just a bit more. Yeah, I think I like that. And I think I've got it pretty even on there. So now, once I've done that, I hit my trim, I trim to boundary, I say okay, I press done, and I'm going to save this pattern as scallop, because I have to do the other side when I'm done with this side. I move to the start point. So basically, what we're doing here is a vertical edge-to-edge design. So just like in quilting, we're doing an edge-to-edge, trimming it to the boundary. It just so happens that that's a vertical design. And let's just check our placement here. Well, when we put our ribbon down, yeah, that'll look nice. So normally, what I was just saying is normally if we had a quilt, we would do this design and we would do edge to edge. And scallops are not particularly fun, even with a ruler, because you have to be really precise when you're doing that kind of ruler work to make it look right. If you're not hitting the offset just right, things go south pretty fast. So we've done one. What do we want to do? We want to do the next row, or the next, in this case, the next column. So I hit overlay, modify, and I just use my finger to move it over. Just like that. Now I need to nudge it some more to get it to look really good. And I think I like that. I trim again to the boundary, hit OK, press done, and move to the start. So keeping with the little bit of the nautical theme, this kind of looks like It could be like the fish scales. As soon as it's no longer a perfect circular scallop, it starts to look like a scale. And as it's going along, it hits these beautifully as it goes. Now, this could have been, my preference would be maybe to have this a little bit denser to really make it pop, but we're doing a quick, we're just doing a quick demo, trying to keep it under 30 minutes. And this one today, I want to actually complete it. Okay. So again, we've done that row, and I think we should do one more row. So same procedure, overlay, modify, move it over, and shift it. I'll shift it down this time. Nudge, nudge, and nudge it down. It really is just that easy. Trim to the boundary. Okay, done. And move to start. And press go. Oh, nope. Oh, sorry. Just as I was saying press go, I forgot I should pull up my bobbin thread. I got out of rhythm, but I caught it. Whew, we're safe. In that row, once this bag is trimmed, that row gets the lining goes in and then top stitched. So all of that very end gets tucked under another seam. Okay, so we're done with that. Now we can exit, and we should do the other side. So let's just do that. And believe it or not, in this little segment, we got step one of this project all done. So again, pattern quilting. I'll select just outside. Using my offset, I'll select just outside the area on the top and bottom. I'll be precise when I'm selecting the vertical here. Good habit to be in, even though this gets hidden under a piece of ribbon. Go down just a little bit. There. And then outside on this side. Now we have to pull in that design. So we go to our saved patterns. I pull in my scallop, but we have to think about what just happened. It pulled it in and scaled it to that size, to the size that's on the screen. And look at that. I need to scale this to be 100% now, to be just like the other side. And I need to rotate it 180 degrees so that the scales all go the right direction. Now I will move it down, give a little bit of clearance for that ribbon. I'll look to my other side to see how it was put in there, and I think I'm pretty good right about there. Trim to the boundary. Done. And then I'll move to the start. You get into this rhythm, pull up the bobbin thread, and press go. Well, that's quilting out, just so I have enough time to show some examples over here. Here we have a couple of pixie cups that we made. And same sort of, we took the pattern, traced it on the QBOT, and then filled the different areas. So this bottom was just a circle. I put a little spiral in it. And then we used a fast track, or yeah, I think this was a fast track design, and this was also edge to edge quilting. So if you imagine this laid flat out, that would be edge to edge. And you know what? It came out looking like a log with the bark. And then if you cut it, that would be the rings of the tree. So that was a happy little accident. Filled off or finished off with a lining and some cork. We'll get some quilting going over here again. So I'm going to trim my bobbin. Easy, easy. Overlay, modify, and just move it. And you get into a little bit of a mantra with this because the procedure is always the same. Trim to boundary, okay, done, and move to start. Pull up our bobbin thread and press go. We'll just let that go. And then we'll finish this up with one more row. Back over to the samples. Here was another pixie cup, a little bit bigger though, so it's a little bit taller. Works really nicely as a pen holder. That's a nice edge-to-edge design, and the gold thread on the denim looks really nice. And there's my favorite perfect cross-hatching again. So back on the frame. We've done that row. And I will trim my threads. Overlay, modify, just move it over. Looks pretty good. I'll leave that. I don't think I even have to nudge it. I trim to the boundary and press done. And we'll move to the start point. Pull up my bobbin thread and press go. And then we'll look at, while that's finishing up, we'll just look at quickly at the details on this bag over here. So once the fabric has been completed, which is what we're doing now, we've completed the fabric. We have a seam down here. We box in the corners for your bag, for you bag makers out there. Add a lining, and Shelly added a nice little pocket in there, little place for the pen. And what's neat is the way that pen is held in is with some elastic that is put right where the hole where you turn everything inside out. You just hide it right there in there, just like that. So that's a great little project. And when you think about these things, what we've done here on the frame, I just did one, but you can imagine if you had, say you were doing something for a wedding and you wanted to do something for the bridesmaids, even a little mini tote bag or something for the tables at an event, you would have the width of fabric or even longer. You could even have pieced fabric out there, and you just go assembly line 1, 2, 3, do 4 at a time, depending on the frame, your frame width. And your project, you can do this all in one setting, depending on the width that you have to quilt. So on the Moxie, we have about 11 inches, 10 3/4. I was being safe. On the King Quilter 2 Elite, you add another 3 or 4 inches to that, and if you have a 24-inch, so forth. You can, the bigger the machine, the bigger the project you can do all at once. But today was just a tip. When you're not making quilts, you can be doing other projects on your frame with QBOT, of course.